I was born at Joyeuse-la-Belle-Fontaine, in the department of the Yonne, August 16, 1776. My father had 3 wives. The first left 2 daughters, the second 4 children, a girl and 3 boys. The youngest was 6 years old, my sister 7, I was 8, and my eldest brother 9, and we had the misfortune to lose our dear mother. My father married again the 3rd time. He married his servant, who bore him 7 children. She was 18 years old and was called a beauty. This stepmother ruled everything. We poor little orphans were beaten night and day. She choked us to give us a good color. Every day, when my father returned from hunting, he would ask, "My dear, where are the children?" And my stepmother answered, "They are asleep." Every day it was the same thing. We never saw our father. She took every means to prevent our finding an opportunity to complain. However, her vigilance was at fault one morning, and my father found my brother and me with tears on our cheeks. "What is the matter?" he asked. "We are dying of hunger. She beats us every day. Come with me. We will see about this." The result of this information was terrible. The whippings did not cease, and the bread was curtailed. At last, not being able to stand it any longer, my elder brother took me by the hand and said, "If you are willing, we will go away. Let us each take a shirt and say goodbye to no one." Early in the morning we set out, and went to Ateas, a place about an hour's walk from our home. It was the day of a fair. My brother put a bunch of oak leaves in my little hat, and hired me out for a shepherd. I earned 24 francs a year, and a pair of wooden shoes. I went to a village called Camoise. It was surrounded by a forest. I served as a watchdog for the shepherdess. "Go yonder," said the woman to me, as I was going along the edge of the wood so as to keep the sheep away from it. A big wolf ran out, drove the sheep back, and seized upon one of the finest in the flock. I never had any experience with such a beast. The shepherdess screamed and told me to run. I hastened to the spot. The wolf could not throw the sheep on his back, so I had time to catch hold of its hind feet, and the wolf pulled one way and I the other. But Providence came to my assistance. 2 enormous dogs, wearing iron collars, rushed out, and in a moment the wolf was killed. Imagine my joy at having saved my sheep, and seeing the beast stretched dead upon the ground. I served the shepherdess as watchdog for a year. From there I went to the fair at Entron. I hired myself out for 30 francs, a blouse, and a pair of wooden shoes to 2 old farmers of Les Bardens, near Menon, who sold wood on the wharves, and who made from 12 to 1,500 francs by my labor. They had 12 head of cattle, of which 6 were oxen. In the winter I threshed in the barn, and slept on the straw. I became covered with vermin, and was perfectly wretched. On the 1st of May, I began hauling the wood to the wharves with my 3 wagons, and always returned to the fields. Every evening my master came and brought me my piece of bread and an omelette made of 2 eggs cooked with leeks and hempseed oil. I only went to the house on Martinmas Day, when they did me the honor to give me a bit of salt pork. In fine weather, I slept in the beautiful wood belonging to the Madame de Damas. I have my favorite, the gentlest of my 6 oxen. As soon as he lay down for the night, I was beside him. First I pulled off my sabots, and then I poked my feet under his hind legs and put my head down on his neck. But about 2 o'clock in the morning, my 6 oxen arose without noise, and my comrade got up without my knowing it. Then the poor herdsman was left on the ground. Not knowing where to find my oxen in the dark, I put on my wooden shoes and listened. I wandered along the edge of the young wood, torn by briars, which made the blood run down into my sabots. I cried, for my ankles were cut to the bone. Often on my way, I used to encounter wolves, with eyes shining like sparks, but my courage never abandoned me. At last, I would find my 6 oxen, and then I made the sign of the cross. How glad I was! I led the deserters back to my 3 wagons, which were loaded with cordwood, and then I waited till my master came to hitch up and set off for the wharf. Then I returned to the pasture, and the master left me there in the evening. I received my piece of bread, and always the 2 eggs cooked with leeks and hempseed oil. And this happened every day for 3 years. The pot was empty under the kneading trough, but the worst of it was the vermin that had taken possession of me. Not being able to endure it any longer, in spite of all possible entreaties, I left the village. I went back to my native place to see if they would recognize me, but no one remembered the lost child. 4 years of absence had made a great change in me, and no one any longer knew me. I reached Joyeuse on Sunday. I went to see its beautiful fountains which flowed near my father's garden. I began to cry, but after a moment's struggle with my grief, I determined what to do. I washed my face in the clear water where formerly I had walked with my brothers and sisters. At last the hour sounded for Mass. I went to the church, my little handkerchief in my hand, for my heart was swelling, but I held out. I went to Mass and knelt down. I said my little prayer looking down. No one paid any attention to me. However, I heard a woman say, "There is a little Moravandian who prays earnestly to the good God." I was so changed that no one knew me, but I knew everybody. I spoke to no one. When Mass was over, I went out of the church. I had at once recognized my father who sung among the choristers. Little did he know that one of his children whom he had abandoned was so near him. I had walked 3 leagues and was very hungry when I left the church after Mass. I went to the house of my half-sister, the child of the first marriage, who kept an inn. I asked for something to eat. "What do you want for dinner, boy?" "Half a bottle of wine and a little meat and bread, madam, if you please." A bit of stew was brought to me. I ate like an ogre, and got into a corner so I could see all the country people who came in doing the same. When I had finished my dinner, I asked, "How much do I owe you, madam?" 15 sous, my boy." "There they are, madam." "You are from Morven, are you not, child?" "Yes, madam. I have come to try to find a place." She called her husband. "Granger," said she, "here is a little boy who wants to hire himself out. How old are you?" 12, sir." "Where do you come from?" "From Manon." "Ah, you are from Morven." "Yes, sir." "Do you know how to thresh in the barn?" "Yes, sir." "Have you worked at it already?" 4 years, sir." "How much do you ask by the year?" "In our country, sir, we are paid in grain and money." "Very well. If you like, you shall stay here. You shall be my stable boy, and all the tips shall be yours. Are you accustomed to sleep on the straw?" "Yes, sir." "If you suit me, I will give you a louis a year." "That is sufficient. I will stay. Shall I pay for my dinner?" "No," said he. "I am going to set you to work." He took me into the garden, which I had known long before he had, and in which I had enjoyed all my childish frolics. I was the most boisterous one in the neighborhood, and my companions used to throw stones at me and call me Redhead. I always came out best, never being afraid of blows. Our stepmother had accustomed us to them. I remember once my nose was dirty, and she took hold of it with the tweezers to wipe it, and was wicked enough to hurt me. "I will pull it off," she said. Consequently, the tweezers were thrown into the well. My brother-in-law then took me into his garden and gave me a spade. I worked a quarter of an hour, then he said, "Well done, but that's enough. We don't work on Sunday." "Well," said my sister, "what shall he do?" "He shall wait upon the table. Go, bring some wine from the cellar." I brought a basket of bottles and handed some to each one. I ran about like a young partridge. In the evening they gave me some bread and cheese. At 10 o'clock, my brother-in-law took me to the barn to sleep, and said, "You must get up early so as to thresh the grain, and then put the bread into the oven and clean the stables nicely." "All right, it shall be done." I bade my master good night, and rolled myself up in the straw. Imagine how I cried. If anyone could have seen me, he would have found my eyes as red as a rabbit's, so great was my mortification at the idea of being a servant in my sister's house, and that at my father's door. I awoke easily. There was nothing to do but crawl out of my hole and give myself a shake. I set to work to thresh the grain so as to make the bread by 8 o'clock. Then I went into the stable and put everything in order, and at 9 o'clock I saw my master appear. "Well, Jean, how does the work come on?" "Not badly, sir." "Let us see the barn. Your work is well done," said he. "These bundles of straw are well made." "Ah, sir, Manon, I threshed all winter." "Come along, my boy. Come to breakfast." At last, with a swelling heart, I went into the house of that sister whom my mother had raised as her own child. I took off my hat. "Wife," said he, "here is the little boy who works well. We must give him some breakfast." They gave me some bread and cheese and a glass of wine. My brother-in-law said, "You must make soup for him." "Very well, I will tomorrow." I got up too late this morning. The next day I set to work, and at the regular hour I had my meal. Ah, what a surprise! I found an onion soup and some cheese with a bottle of wine. "Do not be bashful, my boy," said the master. "You are to spade in the garden." "Yes, sir." At 9 o'clock, I started off to my work with my spade on my shoulder. What was my surprise to see my father watering his cabbages. He looked at me. I took off my hat. My heart was bursting, but I tried to be brave. He spoke to me, asking, "Are you living with my son-in-law?" "Yes, sir." "So he is your son-in-law.